The floor is open. Who would like to go first? Speaking to any one of the four? No. Questions there first? Yes? You got it? Okay.
I appreciate the four speakers very much, but I found Mark's presentation more philosophical and resourceful. So I found a question for you. And to clarify my understanding, what do you mean the later silence and total work? It that means the later means positively devotion, and the silence means lower profile action. Total work, does that mean physically or spiritually activity? One word. Do you agree the essence of happiness means or refers to freedom of will at whose activity? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. I guess maybe a conceptual clarification. Total work in the Peter sense of the term is basically an abuse of the work that we do. So we all have to work. Work is vital to our maturation, to our adoption of responsibility, to our moral and spiritual development. So work is a positive good. His caution is that, particularly in the 20th century, he just saw this kind of encroaching of work-type attitudes applied to areas of life that he conceives as that they shouldn't be applied to. Things like leisure and leisurely activities, appreciating nature, contemplating art, prayer, spiritual fellowship, meaningful conversation, the organization and building of community, that these things don't need quantifiable measures, that they're in and of themselves good. And so, yeah, he cautions against the encroaching of, say, industrial attitudes or measures applied to areas of life where they shouldn't be. To the question of what constitutes happiness, his answer is distinctly spiritual, that it's the possession of the object of your love. So he's speaking in that sense as a Catholic. And so his view of contemplation is this possession of God in the mind, of course, in the heart, since the heart is related to the experience of contemplation. But yeah, it's the possession of the object of your love. So that's if I may speak on his behalf.
Good.
He would say perhaps something like that.
I also would like to ask a question, Mark. I very much enjoyed your paper and presenting us deeper in this context here. It was very wonderful, actually. I admired him from my childhood on, and I even attended in 1965 one of his seminars on the concept of hope. Wow. He wrote much about the virtues, of course. Nevertheless, he is regarded in the German context as a rather conservative kind of scholar and philosopher, which is not a problem, I think. But I just wonder now, since he mentioned you put the emphasis on the concept of pleasure, which is very prominent in the tradition, as you also mentioned, from Aristotle onwards. And it was also after the Second World War that he pointed that out, because the Nazis had just abused human beings, turned them into slave machines, as it were. But he could not first anticipate the situation we are facing now with the digital world, where nobody is exempt from being called up to work and so on. So do you think he has also some intellectual resources to help us safeguard leisure into the future in a society in which we all are somehow attached to different jobs, which are no longer restricted to 8 to 5 hours work, but somehow the whole life is in danger. And that means a lot also for our safeguarding our true humanity, if we are somehow turned into a new type of machine, then our whole basis may be undermined. So do you think he could also have some ideas from your research on how to safeguard leisure into and to protect it into the future?
I think it's an excellent question, and one that I've thought about actually quite a bit. Yes, I do think so, and if I would speculate, I think he'd probably maybe say one of two things, or maybe them both. One would be a challenge to literally make time, to disconnect, to leave your phone at home, to not pull it out when you're with others. Challenging statements that there needs to be more intentionality given the interconnectedness of the world to make time. I think that he is realistic in the sense that if you're in an occupation or a career that requires you to be on call, then there would be a kind of working with that situation. It wouldn't be a black or white, oh, well, you're working too much, therefore you need to quit. My impression is that he doesn't tend to think in those ways. He's quite realistic. But I think he would probably say something challenging, that we need to be more intentional, create space for leisure, while also affirming still the necessity of it. So that would be the basis of the challenge. And then, I don't know, but he might be sensitive to the idea that technology, in a spirit of kind of temperance, could be used to augment the leisurely experience. In other words, the presence of a technological device does not, in and of itself, negate the experience of leisure, but that there could be instances where it could enhance it, or it could augment it in some way, or facilitate it in some way. I find his thinking quite realistic. He's not, I guess, ideological in that sense. But I think he would be very firmly rooted in the conviction that leisure is good and important and vital. And he would kind of work from that to perhaps comment on how to preserve it in a more of a digital age.
Okay, so who's next? Why don't we, Father? Yeah,
Once again, it's a little bit echo of what I heard. Because now a little bit more in the dimension of more philosophical approach, which is human, but at the same time to see even our way of living, the circumstances, the architectural aspect, and now to come to the childhood, is bringing to me, I wonder if in our millennium, if we need to go deep understanding, what is the human being? Because to talk about children in need of something new, or we are a little bit strong on consumerist society, or technological, which is a dictatorship in some way, and we need to enter much more that human dimension of arts and opening something beyond. I wonder if, as such, almost in a civilization approach, I wonder if really we have to go deep in understanding what is to be human. Because even nowadays, even questions sometimes of gender and all these dimensions, is really, we are in need of something deeper in us, which you can open up to the sense of transcendence in ourselves or spiritual, but is, I think your approach in a complementary way, with the need to be deeper and so on, but leaves us, are we not in need of a deep contemplation in our own selves to understand better what is the person to be in the new millennium?
Well, I think that what we've had are a couple of people, Chang over here and Jimmy, who both have thought deeply about these things, maybe not in terms of formal philosophy, but I would you like to respond, Jim?
Sure. In our organization, we have a series of booklet. It's about a self-awakened child. So what we call self-awakened child is a series, dynamic character education program that builds self-esteem, critical thinking, and healthy relationship. That means, if we are practicing a teacher, we are practicing the spiritual preparation and enter the classroom. So we unveil our mask. And then we try to be wholehearted and we see Jesus Christ in the newborn baby. And that's why we are trying to learn to be more human from that perspective. And thank you.
Chang, would you like to try?
Thank you. As an architect, I think what our mission is more like a storyteller. Architecture is our language to explain what happens in here, to tell a story happens in here. But just like I said, a spatial quality is more like a mirror. We create a spatial quality at here, maybe in this room, and everyone could find their ideas when he stepped into here. Maybe in the pavilion at the side, or maybe in somewhere in this garden. Everyone in there could have their own identity. It just reminds me some like Confucius idea, 因材施教. Architecture is more like in this case. Everyone here just like you shot in here and you find the echo at there. And I think for this question, at my angle, I think everyone could have their own answer when he steps into a space.
Rafi, I know you're hiding back there. Would you like to get in on this? It seems to me that one thing that you have profoundly in common with both Jimmy and Chang is that you're living in a world where these kinds of experiences, where people from diverse cultural backgrounds are rubbing shoulders from a very, very early age. That this is at the core of the problem that you were addressing. So.
Yeah, I try to respond on that. Like at least in my experience in Indonesia, like how to be, like what's the meaning of human being? For me, that's how we learn that we live together with others. So the meaning of human beings, the meaning of to be a human being, is to realize that we are living together. We are not alone. We are making relationship with others, and also we realize that others are different from us. We learn to see them as our, let's say, our friends, our brothers and sisters, and that makes us different from other creatures. And you'll see, like in Indonesian context, from the beginning of, like when we are children, we know that we are trained to make friends with people from other religions, from other cultures. For example, I myself, I come from Borneo, from Kalimantan. I was born in Jakarta, which is a more multicultural spot for many people. There are many people from other tribes and also from other religions. I went to a school where there are Muslims, there are Hindus, and then I tried to make friends with them, and also the same thing also happens with them. They try to recognize my faith, they try to love me as a person, to make friends with me, and then also it is more, we realize that it is more difficult in this time when we talk about how to be human beings, when we see the hatreds all over the world, where you can just easily kill someone because you do not belong to my group, my religious group, you are not coming from the same place with me, for example. But that's why then it becomes more important nowadays is to promote these things, that to be human beings is just simply to accept others. And that's all. Thank you.
One thing that I heard in Father Luis's question about human nature and how it might be changing is that there are so many basic concepts that are now in play. Jimmy, one of the things that surprised me about your presentation on Montessori, my children have been in Montessori in the United States very briefly, and I would be surprised to have anybody talk about obedience in that context. And yet obedience is a very central notion in the way we think about formation, we think about cooperation with others. It works on so many levels, obedience, authority, etc. But I was surprised to hear about it in Montessori context. So I'm wondering, would you like to say something further about what you mean by obedience as a way of opening up new directions in human nature?
Just now I tried to lay on the desk all the available material. Every time we got approval, we need to put everything on the desk of the board. So this is the notebook that the newly come out. We try to bring also the American Montessori Institute to the Macau as well. So in this booklet, we have all the notes, checklist, format, sample question, in order for them to do well in the observation. So we have a chart that done by our consultant, that how they achieve to this phenomenon of obedience. Maybe I can answer this when we have it, because it takes a few minutes.
Okay. Well, obedience, at least in my life, was always a very difficult issue. Still is. And so, but I think that would be something that we really have to deal with. I would think that it's also a core value and core struggle within Jesuit formation, as well as any other form of Christian formation that you have. Bingo, we are out of it, but is anybody, before we wrap this session up, does anybody have a question, a comment, an observation for any of our four speakers here? Any final words? I'm sorry, Father, you didn't get a chance.
Sure, I had some questions to ask, but I noticed that when you asked the four presenters to make comments, that all of my questions were responded to.
Oh.
But what led me to find you asked for a comment. I recognize why it's so important to have a symposium like this. Because the talks this morning and the one that I attended over at the Jesuit community, and now the feedback, the comments by the presenters, I had the sense that we are involved in a minority in the world.
Yes.
But a minority that, like what Ronner, the quote from Ronner this morning about to be a Christian in the contemporary age, or he said the future, which is now,
Right.
we have to have a certain mystical view.
Yes.
And mystical is not magic.
Yeah.
It means being able to see the truth.
Yeah.
But that truth needs to be nurtured.
Yep.
And I found that since this morning, I haven't attended a symposium, but more nurturing, in a long time. So I think we really have a really great thing going here.
Yeah.
This is very moving, and the four presenters this afternoon said more about themselves than it did about the content. To get to the place to talk as they did, or as you did, says a lot about their own spiritual life. But I just felt important to say that.
Well, thank you very much. I must say it's really, we must be on the same wavelength, because when Gerhold spoke, and I've known Gerhold for years, but that quote from Ronner about we all must be mystics, this is in the broad sense. Wow, to me that really is at the core of what we have in common, the minority that we are, whatever it is. But at any rate, we're off to a good start, right? I hope, and that we have another day ahead of us tomorrow, as well as the evening and conversation with supper and friendship and all the rest. But right now I'd like to turn it over to the boss,